Hey guys, tonight we step into sandals worn by millions whose stories were mostly forgotten. You're not a Roman senator or general, not even a soldier. No, you're something far more invisible, a slave in ancient Rome. It's hot, your feet are bleeding, and someone just shouted at you in Latin for standing the wrong way. You're shackled in the hull of a creaking ship, your arms ache from rowing, your throat is raw from salty air, and you can't remember the last time you had clean water. You're being transported, not as a traveller but as cargo. You were captured during a minor border skirmish or maybe sold off by someone you once trusted. Either way, you didn't choose this, and there's no escape now. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in Ostia, the Roman port, just as the sun slices through morning fog like a dull blade. The noise is overwhelming. Criers, carts, livestock, and the groans of other slaves being sorted like mismatched pottery. You're herded onto a platform where men with inked forearms inspect you like they're picking apples. One checks your teeth, another yanks your shoulder to see if it pops. Spoiler, it does. A man wearing far too much perfume mutters in Greek. This one's young, might live 10 more years. You're tagged with chalk, which, fun fact, indicates you're a fresh import. The whiter the feet, the newer the slave. Historians still argue whether this was more for marketing or just an early version of inventory control. And then it happens. You're sold. Not for gold or land, but for livestock. 3 goats and a dented amphora of wine, to be exact. The buyer, a plump Roman merchant who snorts when he laughs and carries a walking stick carved with tiny lions. You're loaded into a cart with others, some crying, some stone-faced. One girl whispers she was taken from Britannia, another from Egypt. No one says much. You're not supposed to talk, especially not now. You rumble down stone-paved roads into the belly of the capital. The cart creaks like it wants to give up entirely. Through narrow streets you go, past shops with sausages hanging in windows, and murals that honestly look like they were painted by someone tipsy on mead. The air smells of olive oil, fish brine, and public sweat. Eventually the cart stops in front of a domus, a grand Roman house with a red-tiled roof and a heavy wooden door carved with lions again. Romans love their lions. You're unshackled, briefly, and dragged inside. The domus swallows you in marble floors, frescoed walls, and cool, echoing corridors. There's a shallow pool in the centre atrium, not for swimming, but for show. You could drink from it, but you'd likely be whipped for leaving spots. A tall woman in yellow linen eyes you up and down. She's got a vine tattoo on her wrist and sandals cleaner than your face. She doesn't say a word, just gestures. You follow, of course. You're not stupid. You're shown a small dark room with a straw mat, a broken clay lamp, and one spider who clearly believes it owns the place. Congrats. This is your new home. You collapse. Your back's sore, your stomach's empty, and your mind buzzes like the insects outside the open window. You're still wearing the same tunic you were captured in, now stiff with salt and shame. Somewhere upstairs, someone is playing a double-pipe flute off-key. It's as annoying as it is surreal. You drift into a light sleep but snap awake when you hear the bell. The first bell, the one that means, get upper, now. And you haven't even met the lady of the house yet. By the way, Romans had a habit of giving slaves new names, sometimes ironic ones. If you were big and clumsy, they might call you Felix, meaning lucky. Quirky tidbit. One historian found records of 12 slaves all named Cuculus, which literally means cuckoo bird. Interpret that how you will. As night falls outside and the house goes quiet for now, you stare at the wooden ceiling and realise you're no longer a person in the eyes of the law. You're property, like a broom or a chair. Except brooms don't have to smile when spoken to, but sleep comes anyway, because you're too tired to cry and even dreams at this point are a luxury. You don't get to wake up, you get woken. A hand claps near your face before the sun even peeks over Rome's 7 hills. Another slave, older, wiry, and permanently squinting kicks your mat and grunts, something about the Dominus being in one of his moods. Great. You haven't even had a chance to regret being alive today. They herd you, yes, like sheep, into the courtyard and line you up. You feel like a product at a market stall, because you are. Your master, the merchant with a lion cane and an unfortunate unibrow, is having a few guests over. One of them is looking to expand his domestic staff. Translation: he wants to buy a few human beings to make his life more comfortable. This right here is your second auction. No stage this time. Just a circle of men drinking watered wine and laughing at their own jokes. You're ordered to stand straight. They check your hands for calluses, good for work. They test your Latin, bad for arguing. They inspect your teeth again, because nothing says ready to serve like a decent molar lineup. You're told to walk, then to turn, then to walk again. One guest, tall, with too many rings and a cloak that could smother a horse, pokes your shoulder and mutters something about slouchy posture. Another snorts and suggests you'd make a fine torchbearer. Not metaphorically, literally, a torchbearer. But lucky you, your original master decides to keep you. He says you have potential, whatever that means. Maybe it's your tragic face, or the fact that you didn't faint from standing too long. You're given your first official task, scrubbing the mosaic in the atrium. It depicts Neptune, god of the sea, dramatically riding a dolphin like he's in some kind of underwater pageant. The irony doesn't escape you, being forced to clean up after the sea god, considering you just crossed the sea in chains. One of the other slaves, a woman named Tilla, whispers that you'll be paraded around like this a few more times. Slaves were regularly reassigned, resold, or gifted, like wine, but less appreciated. Historians still argue whether these informal inspections were considered legally binding transactions or just pre-purchase window shopping. While scrubbing, you notice a small detail in the corner of the mosaic, a crude scratch shaped like a fish. Tilla leans in and murmurs, "Christian mark." They sneak them in. Fringe tidbit of the day. Some early Christian slaves used hidden symbols to mark safe spaces or allies. Of course, if your master finds it, you'll all be punished. So, hush. Hours pass, your knees ache. The floor glistens, you're not thanked, you're not even acknowledged. Then comes the branding talk. The steward, an older man named Rufus with half an eyebrow and a full-blown superiority complex, announces that new slaves may be marked. Not all are, but some are. A small letter on the leg, or shoulder, or sometimes the forehead, is meant to show ownership, or punishment, or both. You gulp, quietly. Rufus gestures toward a boy barely older than you. "Run away," he says. The boy has an F on his forehead. For fugitivus, fugitive. Permanent reminder. You stare a little too long. The boy stares back. His eyes say, "Don't try it." In the afternoon, you're led back to your little storage room. Your legs feel like overcooked barley. You don't cry again, you just sort of sit. You're not allowed to nap, not really. But no one checks if you just close your eyes for a minute or 20. The house is bustling with preparations for a feast. There's a strong smell of garlic, lamb fat, and something that should not be fermenting. You're not invited, obviously. You'll be serving it. Another slave, one with sharp cheekbones and a sharper tongue, tells you about his first auction. He was sold in a storm. The buyers huddled under a tarp and pointed at people with oily fingers. He jokes that he was selected by someone too drunk to see properly. You laugh, sort of. And here's your light joke quota. You also find out slaves were sometimes made to wear signs around their necks listing their faults. Talks too much. Slow to wake. Once sneezed on a senator. Ancient Rome, where customer feedback got medieval fast. You practice balancing a tray badly. You're corrected harshly. You practice again. Finally, you're told to help serve wine during the feast that night. Big risk, big chance to mess up. But also, better food scraps if you're lucky. As the sun sets and oil lamps flicker to life, you brush the dust from your tunic, straighten your shoulders, and prepare to play your new part in the Empire's grand dinner theatre. Whether or not you'll survive it? Well, that's tomorrow's problem. The morning after your debut performance as an unwilling waiter, you're woken by the sound of the lady of the house herself, a sharp voice slicing through the corridors like a Roman gladius. You shuffle awake and brace yourself, because this is no ordinary woman. She's the embodiment of marble statues you've seen outside temples, but with all the warmth of an ice cube. Her name is Domitia. She's draped in yellow linen that swishes with every step, adorned with enough jewellery to sink a small ship, and wearing a face mask made from cucumbers and crushed pearls. Yes, crushed pearls. She insists it keeps her glowing. You suspect it mostly just smells like fish and expensive lotions. Your first task, fetch water from the well, but not just any water. It has to be cold, clear, and blessed by the household gods, or else she'll have a tantrum that echoes off the marble walls. You trudge through the courtyard, balancing a heavy clay jug on your hip, feeling the morning sun prickling your skin. The scent of olive trees and roasting bread drifts through the air, mingling with Domitia's favourite perfume, something floral but overpowering enough to give you a headache. On your way back, you nearly stumble over a kitten, a rare luxury in a slave's life, because cats are mostly pets for the wealthy, and they're treated better than most humans here. You pause, thinking maybe this little beast is luckier than you, before remembering you're not allowed distractions. Domitia's sharp eyes catch you as you approach, and she sneers. "Slow! You move like a turtle. Have you been eating too much of the slave's porridge again?" The joke lands like a brick. You force a smile and set the jug down with a careful clink. She flips through a scroll, a letter from her sister filled with scandal about senators and a rumoured affair involving a horse. You try to eavesdrop but quickly regret it when she catches you peeking. The threat in her eyes is as cold as the water you just fetched. After this, you spend the day running endless errands, polishing the silverware until your hands are raw, sweeping dust from floors that shine brighter than the midday sun, and attending to Domitia's whims, like holding her fan just so, or helping her find the right shade of lipstick made from crushed beetles, because nothing says glam like bugs, right? You overhear the cooks arguing over the best recipe for garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce that tastes like feet, but is considered a delicacy. A quirkier fact: some Romans used garum as a medicine or even a perfume. Historians still argue whether it was truly enjoyed or mostly endured for social status. When night falls, the house settles into a strange quiet, broken only by Domitia's dramatic sighs and the occasional clatter from the kitchen. You're exhausted, but know there's no rest. Tomorrow will bring new commands, new insults, and new reasons to wish for freedom. Before sleep, you trace the faint scratches on the wooden door, signs left by previous slaves, a secret language carved into the grain. It's said these marks are messages of hope or warnings, passed down quietly. Whether they helped anyone is debated by historians even today. As you lay back on your straw mattress, the sounds of the city outside lull you into a restless dream, filled with toga-clad senators, roaring crowds, and the distant call of the slave market. You wake wondering if you'll ever see anything beyond these walls. You wake to a familiar yet dreaded sound, the sharp crack of a whip. It slices through the morning air, not as a warning to you this time, but somewhere deeper in the house. You sit up, breath hitching. Whips aren't just tools, they're instruments of control, fear, and occasionally cruel entertainment. Today you're introduced to another grim part of your new life: the punishments. Slaves in Rome were often beaten or branded for disobedience, poor work, or sometimes just bad luck. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some masters believed that whipping a slave in public was actually bad for business. Too many bruises meant a less attractive product. Historians still argue whether these punishments were more for control or spectacle. You're sent to fetch the medicine chest, a dusty wooden box filled with strange balms, oils, and herbs that smell faintly of garlic and vinegar. A woman named Livia, the house's healer slave, quietly tends to a bruised back behind closed doors. She's older, with eyes that have seen too much but speak too little. Livia whispers that once a slave tried to escape by disguising himself as a senator's page. It didn't end well. His feet were found near the Tiber River, tangled in fishing nets. Escape attempts are rare but desperate, like trying to swim upstream against a current that never tires. You make a mental note: no sudden plans. Today's task is to prepare the evening meal. You're in the kitchen, surrounded by clay pots, sacks of grain, and an army of scurrying rats that are oddly bolder than you'd expect. The kitchen slaves jabber about the best recipes for pulse, a type of porridge that's the mainstay of slave diets. It's filling, but bland. Think boiled sawdust with a sprinkle of salt. One cook jokes that if you survive Rome's slave rations, you could survive anything, even a senator's speech. You smile weakly. You notice a small stone statue tucked away behind the hearth. Vesta, goddess of the hearth and home. A strange irony, since the hearth is where slaves toil endlessly while the masters feast. In between chopping and stirring, you overhear gossip about a recent trial where a freedman was accused of plotting against the emperor. It's whispered that some slaves might have been involved, but no one knows for sure. Historians still debate how widespread political conspiracies involving slaves really were. The night feast is lavish compared to your usual meals. You're allowed a small piece of bread soaked in olive oil and a handful of olives. Not much, but enough to keep you going. As you clean the kitchen after the meal, you find a scrap of parchment with a crude drawing. A gladiator fighting a lion. It reminds you of a tale a fellow slave told. Some slaves were forced to fight in arenas not just for sport, but as a terrifying form of punishment or public amusement. You think about your own fate and wonder if you might ever be dragged into the Colosseum, not as a spectator, but as prey. Finally, exhaustion pulls at you again, and you curl up on your straw mattress, the sounds of the house fading into a soft hum. Outside, the city lights twinkle faintly, indifferent to your struggle. You close your eyes, imagining freedom like a distant star, bright, unreachable, but still there. You awake to the smell of fresh bread and burnt oil, two staples of a Roman kitchen, though rarely enjoyed equally. The air is thick with anticipation because today is market day. That means more people, more noise, and more chances you might catch a glimpse of the outside world beyond these stone walls. Your task: deliver fresh produce to the market stall your master owns. The walk through the bustling forum is a chaotic ballet of shouting merchants, clanking carts, and the occasional stray dog scavenging for scraps. You trudge along, heavy baskets balanced precariously on your hips, dodging tunic-clad citizens who seem to float effortlessly on this daily chaos. You notice a street performer juggling flaming torches. One missed catch sends a torch skittering dangerously close to a merchant's stall. The crowd gasps, then laughs nervously. Life in Rome is messy, loud, and often a bit dangerous, much like your current existence. Market day means danger too. Thieves lurk in every shadow, hoping to snatch anything not tied down. Slaves are easy targets, especially ones carrying valuables. You keep your eyes sharp, heart pounding, ready to drop your load and run if needed. One vendor sells wild herbs with the promise they cure everything from bad breath to broken bones. Fringe fact: Roman medicine mixed superstition and science, often in equal parts. Historians still argue whether Roman doctors were more healers or charlatans. You pause briefly at a stall selling small carved wooden figures, gods and animals believed to bring luck. You catch yourself wishing you could buy one, but even your meagre wages can't afford such luxuries. The cacophony of the market is overwhelming, but oddly comforting. Life buzzing outside the oppressive walls of your master's home. You overhear a heated debate between two senators about the latest gladiator games. One claims they're a vital part of Roman culture. The other insists they're barbaric distractions. The truth is murky, and historians still debate the social impact of these brutal spectacles. You notice a group of children playing a game that looks suspiciously like modern hopscotch, but with stones and more yelling. Even in this ancient world, kids find ways to be kids. By midday, you return with empty baskets and aching feet. Your master barely notices your absence. You wonder if he ever truly sees you at all. Back home, you help unload the baskets, wiping sweat from your brow. You're given a stale piece of bread and a small cup of watered-down wine, the so-called perks of your labour. At night, as you lie on your straw mattress, the city's distant murmur lulls you. You dream of freedom, of walking through markets not as a slave but as a person. You wonder, Will you ever escape this life, or are you forever bound to these endless chores and market days? You wake to the clang of metal, the rhythmic pounding of the blacksmith's hammer echoing through the neighbourhood. Nearby, a group of slaves huddle, gossiping about the latest gossip and rumours, because even in chains, humans crave stories. Today your master decides you'll learn a new skill, weaving baskets. Useful, he says with a sneer, for carrying goods or hiding contraband. You doubt either applies to you. Basket weaving is tedious. Your fingers raw from the reeds, but it's a welcome distraction from the endless scrubbing and serving. As you work, an older slave named Marcus tells you about the lives of gladiator slaves. Apparently, some earn their freedom through victory in the arena. It's a brutal, bloody business, but a glimmer of hope for some. Quirky fact: gladiators often had fans and sponsors, much like modern athletes despite their grim profession. You practice weaving while listening to the town crier announce news, rumours of political upheaval, upcoming religious festivals, and, oddly, a new law concerning slave treatment. Historians still argue whether these laws were genuinely enforced or just political theatre to appease public opinion. Later, you're sent to deliver a basket to a local temple dedicated to Fortuna, goddess of luck. The temple is modest but vibrant, filled with offerings from hopeful worshippers. You notice small figurines carved from bone and wood, left as thanks or pleas for fortune. One such figurine, a tiny turtle, is said to bring long life, a hopeful charm for anyone in your shoes. While there, you overhear a debate between priests about the role of slavery in divine order. Some argue it's part of fate. Others believe compassion should guide treatment. These conflicting views show just how complex attitudes towards slavery were. On your way back, you almost trip over a stray dog sniffing at your feet. For a moment, you envy its freedom. It's said dogs were often better fed and treated than slaves. Certainly a frustrating fact to swallow. Back at the house, you continue weaving until your fingers bleed slightly. Domitia inspects your basket with a critical eye and declares it adequate, which in her vocabulary means barely acceptable. The day ends with a quiet sadness, as you realise these small skills won't change your fate, but maybe, just maybe, they'll make your survival a bit easier. You lie on your mattress, fingers stiff but proud, wondering if the gods truly favour the lucky, or just the cruel. Today's air carries a different tension. The city is buzzing with preparations for a festival, the Feast of Saturnalia, the wildest party on the Roman calendar. For you, it's a confusing mix of excitement and dread. During Saturnalia, social roles flip. Masters serve slaves, gifts are exchanged, and there's even a carnival-like atmosphere. But beneath the revelry, the reality of your servitude doesn't disappear. It just hides behind masks and wine cups. You're tasked with decorating the atrium with greenery and colourful ribbons. The scent of pine and fresh flowers mingles with a sharp tang of wine that spills from passing revellers. You can't help but feel a fleeting sense of freedom in the chaos. A quirky detail: slaves were sometimes allowed to gamble and drink freely during Saturnalia, a rare indulgence that might explain why the holiday was both beloved and feared by Roman elites. Historians still argue whether these celebrations genuinely eased tensions or just postponed the inevitable conflicts. As you hang wreaths, you overhear a debate about whether Saturnalia was originally a harvest festival or a midwinter solstice celebration. It's like the ancient version of arguing whether pumpkin spice or peppermint rules the season. Domitia surprisingly loosens her grip today. She even laughs, a sharp biting sound, but laughter nonetheless. You wonder if the party spirit has momentarily softened her. Later, you witness a strange tradition. Slaves and masters exchanging small gifts, sometimes mock crowns or scrolls with humorous titles. You're handed a crude wooden ring, nothing fancy, but it feels like a rare moment of kindness. At the feast, you watch from the sidelines as senators and merchants drink themselves into stupors, their faces flushed and voices loud. You note how quickly the powerful forget their dignities when wine flows freely. In the crowd, you spot a performer telling jokes about senators and their ridiculous antics, his tongue sharp enough to cut through marble. Some say these performers were the only ones who could safely criticise Rome's elite without facing harsh punishment. As night deepens, the city becomes a swirling mess of torchlight, music and laughter. You wonder if, even for one day, the world could feel less cruel. Yet when the dawn comes, the masks fall away, and the harsh truths return. The chains of slavery are still there, as real as ever. You settle back onto your straw mattress, the wooden ring warm in your palm, a small token of a fleeting freedom that feels almost like a dream. The sun rises quietly, the streets of Rome still sticky with the remnants of last night's festivities. You trudge through the narrow alleys, feeling the grit of dust and spilled wine under your sandals. It's another day, but something feels different. The city hums with talk about a slave rebellion in the province of Sicily. Rebellions were the nightmare of Roman masters. You've heard stories of Spartacus, the gladiator who led one of the most famous slave uprisings. His name is spoken in hushed tones, half fear, half admiration. Fringe fact: Spartacus started as a gladiator but became a symbol of hope for slaves everywhere. Historians still argue whether his revolt was a fight for freedom or a brutal bloodbath that scared Rome into harsher laws. Your master watches the news closely, his face tight with worry. You suspect that any sign of unrest means more chains, harsher punishments, and less freedom for slaves like you. Today your task is to clean the weapons room, a grim reminder that slaves were sometimes armed to quell rebellions or used as gladiators to entertain violent crowds. The smell of oil, rust, and sweat fills the cramped space as you carefully polish swords and shields. You notice tiny scratches on one blade, probably from a previous battle or a failed escape attempt. You overhear guards whispering about new laws that make it illegal to teach slaves how to read or write. Fearing knowledge could fuel rebellion. Quirky but chilling. Some slaves actually did learn to read in secret, using scraps of papyrus hidden beneath floorboards. Historians still debate how widespread secret literacy was among slaves. Outside, the marketplace is quieter than usual, tense with suspicion. You watch citizens eye each other warily, as if the city itself holds its breath. By evening, you help lock the house doors and windows. The city feels less like a place of life and more like a cage. You lie on your straw mattress, the weight of unrest pressing down. You wonder if revolts like Spartacus's are flashes of hope, or simply reminders of how deep the chains run. Outside, the night air is thick with uncertainty, and the distant clatter of armour echoes your restless heartbeat. You wake to the distant ringing of bells, the call to work. Today is not just any day. You've been assigned to clean the bathhouse. The baths are a central part of Roman social life, a place where citizens relax, gossip, and conduct business. For slaves, the baths are a grueling, endless job of scrubbing floors, heating water, and carrying fresh towels. Walking through the marble corridors, you notice the intricate mosaics depicting sea creatures and gods, a stark contrast to your rough hands and threadbare tunic. The air is thick with steam, mixed with the sharp scent of olive oil and sweat. A constant buzz of chatter fills the space, from senators discussing politics to children squealing in the shallow pools. You overhear a story about the bathhouse slaves once staging a small strike, refusing to work until conditions improved. It was quickly crushed, but it hints at the simmering unrest beneath the surface. Fringe fact: some bath slaves were so skilled they became personal attendants to wealthy patrons, gaining rare privileges and small freedoms. Historians still argue how much influence these favoured slaves truly wielded. As you scrub, you meet a slave named Felix who secretly teaches himself to read by memorising carved letters on the walls. He whispers that knowledge is power, dangerous but worth the risk. You pause by the changing rooms where men gossip about the emperor's latest decree regarding slave ownership. The new rules aim to regulate treatment, but you suspect enforcement will be spotty at best. Later you carry steaming bowls of water to the hottest pools, your arms aching from the weight. You notice the striking contrast between the luxurious lives of the bathers and your own harsh reality. You think about the baths as a microcosm of Roman society, gleaming on the surface but beneath, simmering with inequality and secrets. As night falls, you rest on your straw mattress, the warmth of the bathhouse lingering like a distant memory. You dream of a day when freedom might feel as refreshing as a soak in these marble pools. You wake to the sounds of loud voices and hurried footsteps. Today is census day, a ritual that feels more like an inspection. Your master calls for you early, instructing you to prepare for the surveyors who will count every slave in the household. The census isn't just a head count, it's a chilling reminder that you are property catalogued and accounted for like livestock. As you dress in your rough tunic, you overhear talk that the census records are sometimes used to identify excess slaves for sale or punishment. Quirky fact: some slaves tried to hide during the census by disguising themselves or sneaking out, but the risk was enormous. Historians still debate how often these evasions succeeded. The surveyors arrive, stern-faced men armed with wax tablets and quills. They bark questions: name, age, or approximate, skills, health. You answer quietly, careful not to draw attention. Your heart pounds as they inspect scars and bruises, silently judging your value. Outside, you glimpse a freedman arguing loudly with his former master about property rights. Freedom in Rome was complicated and often fragile, tangled in legal loopholes that even the experts struggled to unravel. Your master brags to his friends about your good condition, but you know that means you'll be working harder, not better. The census is a tool of control, a reminder that your life is owned and measured. After the surveyors leave, you hear rumours that some slaves were added to other households' counts to increase their owners' political influence. It's a reminder that even the numbers that define you are subject to manipulation and greed. Later, you help prepare the evening meal, thinking about the census and how your identity is reduced to numbers on a tablet. You wonder if anyone truly sees you beyond your value as property. As night settles, you lie on your mattress, the surveyor's questions still echoing. The census is not just a day of counting, but a stark reminder of your place in this vast, indifferent empire. Today, your task takes you outside the city walls to the sprawling fields where your master's crops grow. The sun is relentless, beating down on the dusty earth as you and other slaves toil under the watchful eyes of overseers. You spend hours bent over the soil, planting, weeding, or harvesting whatever is in season. Olives, grapes, wheat. The work is grueling, and the tools primitive, but the land yields Rome's wealth and power. A mainstream fact: slaves in agriculture made up the largest portion of the slave population in the empire, often living in isolated rural estates called latifundia. These farms were essential to Rome's economy, but infamous for harsh conditions. Quirky tidbit: some slaves reportedly used clever tricks to sneak small harvests for their own secret meals or barter, a quiet form of resistance. Historians still argue whether these acts of defiance were widespread or isolated. You notice the overseer watching your every move, his whip glinting in the sun. A warning glance and a sudden snap of leather keep you moving, your body aching but your spirit dull. At midday, you are allowed a brief break, sitting beneath a scraggly olive tree watching the distant hills roll under the heat haze. The air smells faintly of wild herbs and dust, a strange mixture of beauty and desolation. You overhear nearby workers talk about rumours that some slaves on other estates have banded together to plan escapes or revolts. The idea seems both terrifying and thrilling, a glimpse of freedom, however distant. As the sun dips low, you trudge back to the villa, your hands blistered and knees stiff. The overseer's sharp eyes remind you there is no rest until the master is satisfied. That night, you lie beneath a thin blanket of stars, the cool night air a brief comfort after the brutal day. You dream of a life where you don't wake to the whip's crack, but to the freedom of your own choice. Today your master's household hosts a dinner party for some of Rome's wealthiest citizens. Your job: serve the guests silently and flawlessly, the invisible thread holding the evening together. The atrium is transformed, tables laden with exotic foods, figs, olives, roasted dormice, and wine flowing like the Tiber in flood season. The air hums with conversation, laughter, and the clink of fine glassware. You move quickly, balancing trays with practiced ease. Quirky fact: wealthy Romans often employed slaves as personal cooks, sommeliers or musicians, roles that offered slightly better living conditions but never freedom. Historians still debate whether these skilled slaves held real power or were just ornamental. You overhear senators debating the latest political scandal, their voices dropping conspiratorially whenever your master's eyes flicker your way. One senator claims the emperor's new building projects are draining the coffers, while another defends them as monuments for eternity. Amid the chatter, you notice a young slave playing a lyre, his fingers dancing over strings with surprising grace. Music is one of the few escapes for slaves, a way to express hidden sorrow or fleeting joy. Your master shows off your quick service to his guests, as if you were a trophy rather than a person, a brutal reminder of your status in this glittering world. As the night deepens, you overhear whispered rumours of a secret society of freedmen plotting political change. Such talk is dangerous, but it reminds you that not all slaves are silent or resigned. After the guests depart, you collapse onto your mattress, exhausted but oddly energised by the evening's drama. For a moment the walls seem less confining, and the future, though uncertain, feels a little less bleak. You wonder if one day you too might walk free, not as a servant but as a participant in Rome's grand chaotic story. You rise before dawn, the sky still a deep indigo, with stars blinking like watchful eyes. Today you accompany your master's son to the Forum, Rome's bustling heart of commerce and politics. Walking alongside him feels surreal, a glimpse of a world you'll never fully enter. The Forum buzzes with noise, merchants shouting, politicians debating, citizens haggling over goods. The sense of fresh bread, burning oil lamps, and the sharp tang of sweat mingle in the air. You carry the son's toga, mindful to keep pace and avoid drawing attention. A slippery cobblestone nearly sends you sprawling, a small reminder that Rome is as unforgiving on its streets as in its households. A quirky fact: slaves sometimes acted as messengers or secret agents for their masters, delivering information with a speed and discretion no free man could match. Historians still argue how much influence these invisible hands had on politics and commerce. At the marketplace, you watch a heated argument between a freedman and a patrician merchant over a stolen item. Freedom in Rome was often tangled in legal battles, a maze that few slaves ever dreamed of navigating. Nearby, street performers juggle flaming torches and recite poetry. Their skill and daring earn coins from the crowd, but none come your way. You wonder if art can ever truly flourish under the weight of chains. As you help the boy purchase a small figurine, the merchant offers you a sly grin. He knows your status but treats you with unexpected kindness, a small crack in the rigid social order. Later, you carry your charge back through the labyrinthine alleys, the noise fading into the distance. You think about the Forum as a stage where power plays out daily, and you, a silent actor, are forever cast in the background. At home, you rest, fingers aching from the day, but your mind swirls with images of a city alive and endlessly complicated. The morning sun filters through the cracks in the wooden shutters as you're called to the kitchen. Today you must prepare a meal for a visiting dignitary, an honour for the household but a heavy burden for you. The kitchen is a hive of activity, slaves chopping herbs, grinding spices, and stirring enormous pots over open fires. The aroma of cumin, coriander, and roasted meats fills the air, mixing with the faintest hint of smoke and sweat. You carefully follow the recipe, knowing that one mistake could mean punishment, or worse, embarrassment for your master. Quirky fact: some Roman cooks were renowned slaves whose culinary skills earned them small luxuries, but freedom was rarely on the menu. Historians still argue whether cooking was seen as an art form or just another task in the endless chain of servitude. As you work, you overhear whispers about new exotic ingredients arriving from the far reaches of the empire. Pepper from India, dates from North Africa, and strange fruits that no one really knows how to eat properly. The kitchen slaves joke nervously about these fancy foods, poking fun at the master's endless appetite for novelty, while quietly dreaming of tasting something beyond stale bread. Once the meal is ready, you help carry platters to the dining room, where polished silver gleams under the candlelight. The dignitary's eyes scan the food approvingly, his compliments landing like rare coins that you collect silently. Later, back in the kitchen's dim light, you reflect on how food connects Rome to the vast empire, the taste of conquered lands and the power wielded through exotic delicacies. As night falls, you rest, your body tired but your mind curious about the world beyond the kitchen's smoky walls. You wake to the sound of chanting from the nearby temple. Today is a religious festival honouring Jupiter, and slaves like you are expected to participate in preparations, carrying offerings, cleaning altars, and helping decorate the grand marble steps. The temple's scent is thick with incense and the sharp aroma of burning animal fat. The air vibrates with prayers and the distant beating of drums. You watch the priests, their flowing robes contrasting with your simple tunic, performing rituals older than the city itself. A mainstream fact, religion was deeply woven into daily Roman life, and slaves were often included in festivals, both as helpers and participants. Quirky tidbit: some slaves believed certain gods were protectors of the oppressed, whispering secret prayers for freedom. Historians still argue whether these spiritual hopes ever led to organised resistance. You carry baskets of fruit and bread to the altar, the weight grounding you in the moment. The crowd is a mix of citizens, freedmen and slaves, each connected by shared traditions despite vast social divides. A group of slaves quietly exchange stories about miracles or curses linked to the festival, tales that spread hope or fear in equal measure. You listen, fascinated by how belief can soften the harshness of your daily existence. Later you join others to clean the temple steps, the stones worn smooth by centuries of feet. Your hands feel reverent as you scrub away dust and grime, imagining the countless slaves before you who perform the same ritual. As dusk falls, the festival culminates in a grand procession through the city, torches flickering against the night sky. You watch from the shadows, a small part of a vast and ancient tradition. Lying down that night, you feel a strange comfort in the gods' presence. Perhaps they see you, even if the world does not. The chill of early morning nips at your skin as you're dragged out to the training grounds. Today, you must watch gladiators prepare for the upcoming games, a brutal spectacle that both terrifies and fascinates the city. The arena is a massive amphitheatre, its stone seats rising like tiers of an enormous shell. You smell the dust mixed with sweat and blood, a scent that lingers long after the crowd has left. The clang of swords and the grunts of fighters echo in the cool air. Gladiators are slaves trained to fight, some willing, others forced. They are both reviled and celebrated, living lives of pain and fleeting fame. Quirky fact: some gladiators became celebrities, with fan clubs and even merchandise like miniature figurines. Historians still argue whether gladiators had any real hope of freedom, or were doomed to die in the arena. You watch as a pair of gladiators spar, their muscles tense, sweat flying. The crowd's roar rises even in this empty training space, imagined or remembered. The overseer's whip cracks sharply, reminders that failure means punishment or death. Behind the scenes, you overhear whispered talks of gladiators who rebelled or escaped, stories told in half-truths and legends. These tales are both cautionary and inspiring. Later you help clean the equipment, shields scarred from countless battles, helmets dented and scratched. Handling these tools of death fills you with a strange mix of fear and respect. As you leave, the sun sets behind the distant hills, casting long shadows over the city. You wonder about the fate of the fighters. Do they dream of freedom as you do, or have they accepted the arena as their only world? That night the echoes of sword clashes and cheering haunt your dreams, a violent lullaby for a restless soul. Dawn breaks with a dull grey light filtering through your cramped quarters. Today, you're tasked with tending to the household's livestock, goats, chickens, and a rather stubborn pig named Messias. It's a break from your usual duties, but the animals have their own unpredictable demands. The scent of hay, manure, and fresh earth fills the air as you muck out pens and carry buckets of water. The animal's low grunts and clucks offer a strange comfort, a simple rhythm in a complicated world. A mainstream fact. Many Roman households kept livestock relying on slaves to care for them, both for food and companionship. Quirky fact. Some slaves believed their animals had spirits or omens, whispering secrets about their masters' futures. Historians still argue how much religious or superstitious belief influenced daily slave life. As you feed Messias, he snorts loudly and charges, scattering the chickens in a flurry of feathers. You laugh softly, a sound almost foreign in this life of labour and restraint. You overhear the stable master grumbling about a recent theft of feed, blaming nearby slaves for sabotage, a reminder of the constant tension simmering below polite surfaces. Later, you gather eggs, your fingers gentle yet efficient. The morning light warms your skin, and for a moment you forget the chains invisible, but ever present. As the day ends, you sit by the pens watching the animals settle. They, like you, live in a world defined by routine but filled with quiet moments of unexpected freedom. You drift to sleep with the soft bleating and cooing as a lullaby, the stable's chaos a strange but welcome companion. The heat today is unbearable as you're sent to the baths, not for leisure, but to scrub the marble floors and clean the vast pools where Rome's citizens come to relax. The baths are a world apart, a place where the city's power and luxury are on full display. Steam rises from the hot water, mingling with the scent of oils and perfumes. You move silently among wealthy patrons lounging on mosaic benches, their laughter echoing against the high ceilings. A mainstream fact. Roman baths were social hubs open to all free citizens, but slaves like you worked tirelessly behind the scenes, unseen yet essential. Quirky tidbit. Some slaves specialised in massage or applying scented oils, a rare skill that earned grudging respect. Historians still argue whether slaves ever formed communities within the baths or remained isolated. You overhear gossip about the emperor's latest indulgences, golden baths and exotic dances, a stark contrast to your sweaty toil. A sudden shout startles you. A child splashes too roughly and a patron scolds him sharply, the tension a reminder that privilege often came with cruelty. As the day wears on, you dip your hands into the cool water, the touch refreshing but fleeting. You imagine the freedom of slipping beneath the surface, if only for a moment, without fear or watchful eyes. As dusk falls, the baths empty, and you mop the last puddles, your muscles aching but your spirit momentarily cleansed. You leave behind the laughter and luxury, returning to the quiet shadow of your quarters, where the world's riches feel a lifetime away. This morning you're summoned to the schoolroom where your master's children are learning their letters and numbers. Your job? Keep order, fetch supplies, and quietly assist the teacher when needed. Education is a privilege in Rome, and your role is a reminder of your place outside it. The classroom smells of chalk dust and wax tablets, mixed with the faint aroma of your master's burnt oil lamps. The children recite their lessons aloud, voices rising and falling in a steady rhythm that fills the small room. A mainstream fact. Roman boys from wealthy families were educated by slaves called pedagogi, who acted as tutors and guardians, a role that sometimes gave them surprising influence. Quirky tidbit. Some slaves secretly taught their masters' children lessons in Greek philosophy or poetry, planting ideas that would later challenge Rome's norms. Historians still argue how much these early teachings shaped the empire's future leaders. You watch as one boy struggles with a math problem, his frustration clear. You feel a pang of sympathy, remembering your own lack of schooling and the closed doors it created. During a break, the children play a game of knucklebones, their laughter ringing through the air. You join in briefly, the momentary joy a fragile escape from your daily grind. The teacher praises the children's progress, unaware that you absorb lessons of your own, from the books, the discussions, the world beyond servitude. As the afternoon wanes, you tidy the room, imagining a different life where learning is not a privilege but a right. That night you dream of scrolls and stories, the promise of knowledge a distant star guiding you through darkness. The city hums softly as twilight slips over rooftops and narrow alleys. Tonight your master hosts another feast, but you're spared the usual duties and sent instead to the garden to tend the herbs and flowers, an oasis of quiet in a relentless world. The garden is small but lush, filled with rosemary, lavender and bright poppies. The scent is calming, a gentle balm against the day's weariness. You run your fingers over the cool leaves, feeling a rare moment of peace. A mainstream fact: Roman gardens were more than decoration. They were places of contemplation, healing, and even secret meetings. Quirky tidbit: some slaves cultivated rare plants believed to have magical or medicinal powers, quietly passing knowledge through generations. Historians still argue how much botanical wisdom slaves contributed to Roman medicine and superstition. You pause by a small statue of Flora, goddess of flowers, and whisper a silent prayer. For strength, for freedom, or simply for this fleeting calm. In the distance, laughter and music drift from the villa, but here under the stars the world feels momentarily yours. You reflect on everything: the hunger, the work, the small rebellions of hope tucked inside your heart. Tomorrow will bring its challenges, but tonight you breathe deeply, savouring the quiet. And as your eyelids grow heavy, you remember that even in chains, the human spirit finds ways to bloom. Now the night deepens, and your body finally feels the slow release of the day's burdens. Imagine the soft rustling of leaves in a gentle Roman breeze, the faint chirping of crickets blending with distant city sounds. Your breathing slows, matching the steady rhythm of a world that moves on without you, but also because of you. The stars above, ancient and constant, cast a pale glow over the city's silent stones. You feel the weight of the past, heavy but also strangely comforting, like a thick, familiar blanket. Your thoughts drift like petals on a quiet stream, unhurried, free to float anywhere. Remember the scent of the garden's herbs, the warmth of the sun on your back, the distant laughter from the baths and feasts. These small moments tucked into a life of servitude are your secret treasures. Though the future is uncertain and freedom may seem a distant dream, know this: every breath you take, every step you make, carries the echoes of countless souls who came before you and those who will come after. Sleep now, and let the ancient city's gentle embrace soothe you. Tomorrow is another day in Rome, another day to endure, to hope and to live.